Well, the time has come where the FIA have finally revealed the regulations for Formula One for 2026, regulations that they hope are going to produce some more exciting and competitive racing for us, the fans, and for the drivers. And these regulations are set to be ratified by the World Motorsports Council on June the 28th. But what should we be expecting to see? Let's have a quick look at some of the top lines. To start with, the cars are set to be more nimble. The concept at the heart of the 2026 regulations target improved raceability and therefore closer racing. They're going to be lighter as well, 30 kilograms lighter than the current generation F1 cars, improving efficiency and handling. Redesigned power unit builds on the world's most efficient engines with almost 300% more battery power and an even split between internal combustion and the electric power. Active aerodynamics to suit the energy management requirements for the new power units. Increased overtaking opportunities through new manual override mode, granting more electrical power deployments for the following car. A record number of 6 power unit manufacturers with Ferrari, Mercedes, Renault, Honda, Audi and Red Bull Ford powertrains committed to Formula One from 2026, and improved safety through stronger structures and even tougher tests. Well, let's get straight into a bit more of the detail then, shall we? And we've got Jon Noble over there in Montreal to tell us a little bit more. First of all, Jon, great to have you along, but are there any surprises?
I don't think there are any surprises. Well, maybe the surprise is that the cars don't look radically different. You know, we've heard all these kind of horror stories and scare stories for 2 years about Frankenstein cars, these cars spinning on the straights and weird active aero, and drivers need to change down gear on the straights to recover energy and all this sort of thing. So I think we've been expecting this kind of huge revolution of something super weird to be happening. But actually, when they come out, they look very similar to the current cars, but it's in the details, in the, in the sizes and some of the aerodynamic elements. I think they look different, and I think will make a significant difference to kind of what we get to see on track in terms of the racing.
Well, let's drill down into the detail then, shall we? It does say that the cars are going to be nimbler, and I love that technical term, nimbler. What have they done to achieve this?
Made them smaller, actually. In effect, they're going to be 30 kilos lighter. So this is being achieved through basically the cars going to be shorter. So the wheelbase drops from 3.6 metres to 3.4. The width is dropping from 2 metres to 1.9 metres. And the floor width is going to be reduced by 150 millimetres. And on top of that, we're going to get narrower tyres as well. So the fronts are being reduced by 25 millimetres and the rears by 30 millimetres, even though the diameter will stay at 18 inches. So all combined, it's 30 kilos. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not the kind of the revolution that perhaps some would have liked, but it's at least a step in the right direction, and we're not keep inching upwards as we have done for the past few years.
They're not significantly different to what the cars currently are, as you're just saying. I'm just thinking of circuits like Monaco. These cars are still pretty big beasts going around street circuits.
Yeah, I think they are still big beasts, but also think that, the days of going back to how they were 15, 20 years ago have long gone. We've got this, and I think there's two factors at play here. One is the current turbo hybrid engines. We've got big batteries in Formula One now, and there's going to be more battery reliance from 26. Batteries are currently really heavy. I mean, we see it in road cars, we see it in Formula One. You can't escape the fact that there's kind of a certain weight that's coming from the batteries, which cannot be changed. And also safety's changed dramatically now. The cars are, much bigger crash structures. We've got the halo, we've got stronger roll hits going for 26, more, tougher crash tests. So everything's kind of beefed up. So I think it's just a natural progression and direction Formula One's taken. And a lot of this weight you simply just cannot take off, because there's you cannot say to anyone in F1, oh, let's just remove some safety elements to make the cars lighter. Safety always comes top.
Yeah, one of the things that weighs a lot, the batteries. Now, we've known for a while about what's likely to happen with the power unit. What can you tell us? It's all been confirmed, it seems.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they've published the engine regs for quite a while now, and they're just honing details. But in effect, we're sticking with turbo hybrids. So partly internal combustion engine, partly battery. The difference is from 26, it's going to be a 50-50 split. Not all times, but peak performance, 50% of the power is going to come from the battery, and 50% from the ICE. So I mean, in effect, the ICE current engines are going to be wound down a bit, more restricted fuel flow to bring their power down, and battery technologies or battery input has been ramped up massively. So it's going to be a new way of cars kind of delivering performance out on track.
People have raised concerns, haven't they, over the last few months, really, that this could lead to cars lifting and coasting on the straights. Could you explain this to us a little bit? Because it seems a bit of a strange idea that Formula One will slow down with the direction they've gone in. Yeah,
so when the rules came out, I think they, just to give the manufacturers time to create engines, obviously the teams went away, ran some simulations of how it could map out. And what they found, you do a simulation at somewhere kind of power thirsty like Monza. So the quickest way to get a Formula One car down a straight is you use all your battery power at the start of the straight, you burn it all for acceleration, because that's the speed you gain at the start of the straight, you carry it all the way down. So in effect, you would burn all your battery power at the start and then be backing off, and then whether you're changing down gear to try and get more battery power or you're lifting and coasting, you'd basically be off the power and into the first corner, and it would look terrible. But the FIA, this is all part of the learning process, and what the FIA have done is they've implemented this mixture of kind of technical regulations, sporting regulations, that kind of limit the amount of power deployment you can have. So it'll stop this ability of burning all your power at the start of the straight, lifting and coasting. It'll now be more staggered, more gradual, and it should in effect be more akin to current Formula One. And actually, from what I understand, the new cars are going to be more powerful than the current generation of cars, and they're going to accelerate much quicker because there's a lot more kind of instant power available.
There was a rumour, wasn't there, that we'd like to hear these cars revving full out while they're going around the slow chicanes and hairpins of circuits around the world. Is that likely to be something we'll see, do you think?
I think we will. I think there's no avoiding the fact that teams' priority is always performance. They don't particularly care how a car looks out on track or how it races or what the spectacle is. All that matters to them is performance. And if you're in a corner and you're what I think technical term is grip limited, as in your speed is limited by the grip you have available, you want to be doing everything you can to that engine to try to ramp up the power. So if you want it on full revs just to try to get some energy into the battery, that's what you're going to do. I think it may not be a good look, and it may be something we get used to, or maybe something that causes outrage when it happens. But I think it's a small compromise if the overall package of Formula One works better.
It's going to cause outrage to some people. Of course it's going to outrage some people. It's always, no matter what happens, it's going to be outrage somewhere along the line. Now, one area that I think is really interesting is active aerodynamics. It's a really interesting thing. What's the reasoning behind this? Because it was banned back in 1969?
We've had active more recently. There was a time when this idea of having the front wing kind of moving up in corners and being adjusted came in the early 2000s, but didn't particularly work. It's come back primarily because there is a concern that the new engines, because of the way they deliver power and less downforce, that the grip levels wouldn't work. If you had a current car with high drag levels, actually be quite slow on the straights. So they needed to find a way to ensure the performance is good in the corners and the drag was reduced on the straights. So the best way to do this is active aero. There's been various tests done, and there were some kind of alarming stories out of some simulators recently of drivers complaining that the cars were spinning when they got on the accelerator, or they couldn't take minor kinks flat out. But I think this is, from what the FIA have said, that this is part of tests to work out what doesn't work, and they've realised it doesn't work if just the rear wing's adjusting. They need both to be adjusted. So what we're getting is kind of a two-stage active. There's going to be, I think it's called, there's a Z stage and an X stage, and the X stage will be the low drag version that will be used when the driver wants it on the straights, can reduce drag. It won't be like DRS though, so you're not going to get a high drag, a low drag and a DRS. It's just going to be high drag and low drag for the straights, and overtaking will be achieved through this kind of a power override system.
There's been quite a few articles written on autosport.com, so I urge our viewers and listeners to go and look at those. Now, one area's got a really fancy name, and I want to make sure I get it right because it's a very fancy name, and that is manual override mode, MOM. You'll call it manual override mode. Push to pass, right? Push to pass, as the rest of the world calls it. He's instigating MOM. How will this work? And is it something that you welcome? Do you welcome MOM?
So I think as they've dug into the rules and realised that F1 you still need something extra to help overtaking, that if you have no DRS at all or no extra way of passing, it is still really, really difficult. So rather than going the DRS route, they've looked at this manual override system, which will basically be, if you get within a certain distance of the car in front under acceleration, there'll be a certain point where you can activate the system and it will give you a power boost to, in effect, drag past the car in front. So from the outside, it will be push to pass, but the FI don't like calling it push to pass. So that's why it's got its funny name.
Yeah, it's a funny name, and it's going to be very enjoyable reading your articles in the future about that. Now, the FIA have also said they're going to be looking at improving safety through stronger cars, as you say, and tougher tests, which is always a good thing. Safety is always a really good thing, as we know. Do you have any more detail on that?
Yeah, I think it's just ramping up areas. There's always incidents and accidents happen that kind of highlight weaknesses in the current system. Obviously, Guan Yu Zhou's crash at Silverstone, I think it was 2 years ago now. Time passes quite quickly. Where he went upside down and the roll hoop basically snapped, came off. So they've had to strengthen that. They've strengthened that up for 26. And also the front of the car, I think there's some concern that the way the current frontal crash structures are, that if there's a double impact, so a driver hits a barrier, takes the nose off and then strikes it again, there's not enough protection for the driver. So they've kind of changed the systems, trying to get a double knockoff system now, basically. Just the ever constant quest to make things safer.
Let's just quickly read these quotes out as well, because I think it's worth it. So President Mohammed bin Salem has said, the key features of the 2026 F1 regulations are advanced sustainability, technology and safety. Our aim together with Formula One was to produce a car that was right for the future of the sport's elite category. We believe we have achieved that goal. And F1 CEO Stefano Domenicali said, we enter this new regulatory cycle with the sport in the strongest position it's ever been, and I'm confident that the work done by the FIA to create these regulations will further strengthen the position of the sport around the world. So it seems they're both pretty confident.
Yeah, I think there is some optimism. I think we've had times of the scare stories which have kind of been bubbling away. And teams are always sceptical, and teams try and find faults and try and expose issues and get them out in the press and public. But I think there is a level of confidence that the steps they've made and changes they've made and lessons they've learned from what they got wrong with the 22 cars will be transferred into 26 to make it better, rather than it being an overall compromise forced upon Formula One by the fact it's changed power units.
Now, I know you've been speaking to the FIA single-seater technical director, Nicholas Tombassis. Now, this is a story that's going to be published soon. How confident is he that we're really going to see closer racing? We've had this before, haven't we, where even the regulations we're on right now were supposed to bring closer racing? Yeah, I think there's a degree of confidence, because I think there's an acceptance that they didn't get everything right with the 22 regulations. I think Tombassis, in the press release that the FIA sent out today, says these rules about righting some of the wrongs that happened with the 22 cars. I think what happened with the current ground effect, they started off really well. We had some very close racing, the cars could follow. But as the teams kind of exploited certain areas, outwash returned, dirty air returned, got harder and harder for cars to follow each other, and it's steadily got worse. So I think the FI's kind of analysed what the teams did, the areas that they pushed on to do this, and have basically closed those options down. So it's a simpler, narrower front wing. They've got rid of the front wheel arches. There's some in-wash elements in front of the side pods as well. And also the floors are changing. The kind of the ground effect or amount of downforce produced by the floor is going to be reduced. The beam wing's going. The tunnels are going to be shallower. Everything's just aimed at kind of addressing the issues that were highlighted with 22. I mean, it's quite refreshing. They're not just ploughed on thinking, we got this absolutely spot on, let's carry on and do more. I think they've worked out what didn't work and hopefully address it next time. Well, that kind of brings me to my next question, really. You've been around for a while. I mean, I try not to be rude about the way I say it, but you've been around for a while, and you've been around when there have been these technical regulations have changed. You've been through quite a few of these phases. How excited are you about these new phases, genuinely? And do you think it's really going to bring the change that the FIA and Formula One and all the rest of them are saying they hope it's going to bring?
Yeah, well, I'm always sceptical of changes, and always get more sceptical. But maybe this is my old age. I always get more sceptical the greater people say things are going to be. So you always think, the more people try and ram down positivity into you, you think there must be must be something here that's not actually going to work. But I think there are details of these rules that are good, and I like the fact they've addressed the weaknesses of this current rule set. I think the worst thing would have been if they accept the current cars are fantastic and the racing's brilliant and everything's been hunky-dory and we didn't make any mistakes. But they did make mistakes. The current cars can't follow each other close enough. They're far too sensitive to ride height, which has had another impact on racing because some teams haven't been able to master these cars at all. Mercedes are in year 3 now and they're still trying to battle to sort out how to make a super competitive current ground effect car. So all these little elements, and it's all details that count in Formula One. It doesn't especially matter what the car looks like. It doesn't matter what the front wing looks like or the rear wing looks like or the shape of the tunnels. It's about how it performs on track. And I think there's enough potential in its regulations for them to understand how the racing can work as long as the power unit regulations prove fit for purpose. I think that's the big uncertainty we have at the moment. What's it going to be really like when they're out there? Are we going to be consigned to economy runs? Is there still going to be a lot of lifting and coasting? Is it still going to be all about battery management and all the elements that stop us having flat out races? So I think there's some positives, but equally I think there's still some big question marks that we won't know till these cars are running for the first time in 26.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with your cynicism of enthusiasm in mind, I think your articles are absolutely fantastic, by the way. The greatest I've ever read. Final question for you, Jon.
You got my envelope of cash.
Yeah, exactly. It's over there. So it's not very big, actually. It wasn't as big as I was hoping. My final question for you is, I can't really let you go with, are you really in Montreal or is it a travel lodge in Swindon?
No, I am in Montreal, but I'm staying in, we're staying in university accommodation. Just because Montreal's so expensive these days. I think it's one of the downsides of F1's popularity is all the hotels bump up the prices. So I live like a student for a weekend.
It's a nice echoey room. Look, Jon, thank you very much indeed, as always. And don't forget, you can find out more by checking out autosport.com and seeing all the articles that are being written and will be written about these changing regulations of 2026. As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.